My name's Julie Gordon. I'm the events manager here at RJ Julia, and we're thrilled to have you here in store this evening. Our special guest tonight is here to celebrate the release of her 22nd book. A resident of Durham, Connecticut, Kristan is a good friend of the store. We've had the pleasure of hosting her many times to celebrate her books previously, including Good Luck with That in 2018, Life and Other Inconveniences in 2019, Always the Last to Know in 2020, and Pack Up the Moon in 2021. This year, we are back in person to celebrate the launch of Out of the Clear Blue Sky, which you all have a copy of in your lap. Reading about this book in preparation for tonight, I saw reviews ranging from the perfect beach read and your next big summer read has arrived to I absolutely love this book and serves up stories that are fresh, relevant, and deeply involving. But my favorite review said, reading a Kristan Higgins novel is like spending time with a dear friend. Aww. So grab a copy of Your Next Best Friend and give a warm welcome to Kristan Higgins.
Thank you. It's so nice to be back in person. I mean, thank you for tuning into the Zoom stuff, but my God, I would get so sweaty during those things. Like my Zoom sweats, I'd be drenched in sweat by the end of them. And you're smiling at the little green dot, imagining all you guys. So it's nice to actually see you again. And I like to just give a shout out to some of my fellow authors who are here. We have Regina Kyle in the back. And Regina writes great rom-coms. Megan Ryder, a lovely contemporary romance writer. Jamie K. Schmidt is here, who writes just about everything. And Elizabeth Essex is here, and Maddie Dawson / Sandy Shelton. So some of my favorite authors. So it's really nice to see you. So my reading glasses on, but because I'm a grandmother now. Yes. So yes, cheers to my daughter and son-in-law. But so this was a fun book to write because it's about something that I have not experienced. It's about infidelity. But before, I just want to say something. This book is really special to me also because it's dedicated to my Aunt Teresa, who was a librarian and youngest aunt for me, just 10 years older, and she was the best, and she died suddenly this past spring. But she did get to read the book and more importantly see the dedication, which is very heartfelt. And when she read it, she got all teary-eyed and she hugged me and said, "It took you long enough." So that's my Aunt Tess. So this is her book. So I just want to ask, how many people here have fantasized about what they would do to their spouse if the spouse cheated? Yeah. Okay. I mean, we've all had those thoughts. I mean, my husband is wonderful. He's working tonight. He's sorry he couldn't be here, but I would smother him. I would smother him lovingly for all the good times we've had, but I would smother him. So I got this idea just because of looking around. It seemed like the kids were going off to college and half of our social circle was getting a divorce. And that's a really natural point to split up. The kids are raised and you think, we want different things. And to those couples who have done this with grace and honesty and consideration, good for you, unicorns, right? Because it doesn't seem to be the norm. And so it seems like there's a lot of people who have divorce forced on them, who didn't know that their partner was unhappy or thought things aren't perfect, but what we have is good, or we have decades in, so let's keep going. And then their partner decides that the marriage is dead and gone, and without really discussing it, say I want a divorce, and it's like a grenade being tossed into your life. And then the added horror of learning that you've been cheated on, because no one starts off getting married saying I hope I find someone else so our marriage can end bitterly and us as sworn enemies. If you did start your marriage that way, I wish I had been invited. But infidelity is so painful, and it's such a violation. Every woman I know who's been cheated on has wished her husband would die instead. Life insurance money, and so at least you could have the nice memories that way, right, without them being tainted by your husband marrying a younger woman, in the case of Lily Silva, the heroine of Out of the Clear Blue Sky. So this book is set on Cape Cod, which is near and dear to my heart. My parents bought a house up there when I was little, and it's, a place I've been on vacation every year of my life. So Lily is a 5th generation Cape Codder, Portuguese fishing stock, and she has spent 20 years trying to create the perfect family life for herself and her husband and her son, her in-laws, her very prickly divorced parents, her sister, her stepmother. She's, the heart of the family, always trying to have things go beautifully and be warm and wonderful, and keep her parents in separate corners. And, her own childhood is kind of divided in half, before my parents divorced and after. And her sister, Hannah, went to live with their mother, and Lily stayed in Wellfleet with her dad. So her goal in life is to do better than they did. And this story is also about motherhood. Dylan is Lily's son, and he's everything to her, her only child. And he's graduating, and he's going to college 2,500 miles away. And her heart is breaking, because life as she knew it is ending. And she loved that life, and she loved being a mother. And she's so proud of her son for being brave enough to go to Montana, even if she thinks he's a horrible, ungrateful child at the same time. And I'm just glad to say that my own son isn't moving 2,500 miles away. He's moving 3,000 miles away. You ungrateful, terrible, you're grounded, Declan. But Lily is facing the empty nest, which is something that all parents have to face. And she thinks, as a consolation prize, Brad, my husband and I, will start a new phase of life. We'll travel and do things together and reconnect. But Brad has other plans. He is stinking with midlife crisis. He's written a book, for one. He's a therapist, and he's written a book about living his best life, which is called Living Your Best Life. And he had planned for it to be a #1 New York Times bestseller, and Oprah ended up not calling, and the world wasn't bowled over. And then as his son's life is opening up, filled with possibilities, Brad is getting bored with his own life. He's thinking, what about me? What about my dreams, my goals, my youth? And is just being content with Lily, who I married when I was in my 20s, really it. So the bastard does what so many other men do. He cheats with Melissa. She is a woman everything Lily is not. She's tall, blonde, rich, young, and mercenary. She is a stone-cold killer. And Brad decides that he should tell Lily about this change of events the night before their son graduates from high school. So Lily thinks, at first she doesn't believe it. Brad, he's not that brave. He would never go up against me in a fight, But it is true, and she's heartbroken, but she's really also furious. And it was so much fun to write a book about a woman's anger. You guys are pretty devoted readers. You know that most of my characters are really, really nice, really pleasant. They're witty. Lily's furious, and she runs with that. She feels like, my kid's gone, my life is disintegrating, it's not fair. Revenge is petty, sure, but it's really satisfying too. And it fills her time, because now Dylan's off at school in Montana. Brad doesn't even have the grace to leave town. He and Melissa move to the ocean side of the Cape, or actually the bay side, on a house on the water that's just stinking gorgeous. And she's a nurse midwife. She's got plenty of work to do. But when she comes home, she has friends, and she thinks, well, what else is there for me? Revenge. So, a lot of shenanigans, we'll say, kind of criminal, maybe a little bit. she jumps the rails on the crazy train. And having never been divorced, I asked my friends, who had been in this situation, did you do anything petty or anything? And they're like, do you want to use this in a book? I'm like, yes, I'm recording, and I also asked on Facebook, and oh my God, the things that people do are so fun to read about. And so I used some, I made some up, and I used them with glee, because the thing about this kind of divorce under these circumstances is it's not fair. It's legal, anyone can end a marriage, but it's not fair. And Lily wants justice. Because here she is, her lifestyle is going down, his has shot way up, and you can't blame her for going a little rogue. And then there's Melissa, the other woman, Melissa Grace Spencer Finch Fairchild, born Missy Jolene Cumbo. So she was so much fun to write because she's everything I'm not. She's beautiful and fit. Okay, she can do yoga without falling down. She's completely unconcerned with anyone else except as how they can be of service to her, and she's really focused and determined. She's beautiful. She realizes when she's 14 years old that men find her stunning, and she thinks, well, that's what I've got, I'm gonna work with that. And so you kind of have to admire her, because she does. She lies, cheats, and steals, and gets to the world she wants to live in. Because I write fiction, I start to have her maybe evolve a little bit as the story goes on, and you think, maybe you admire her a little bit here, and maybe you can see why she might have done some of these things. But overall, she's still like this Instagram whore, shallow person. And I love her. So Lily's gonna have to do what so many women in their 40s do when their kids go away. It's like, reconsider the person that you have been, wife, mother, daughter-in-law for Lily, and also who do you want to be? What's next for you? Because I remember when Flannery went off to college, breaking my heart, I got to go to Europe that fall. And I remember the wonder of being in Italy by myself. I was on a book tour, and I just thought, like, this is amazing. I thought, like, life was going to be so sad without my daughter, and my son will be leaving me soon. But it was so exciting and wonderful, and I thought, like, wow, life isn't done with me yet. What a great thought. And also, people aren't maybe always what you think. Lily's lived in this town for her whole life. She knows everybody, and she's got everybody pegged, but she's not close with her sister, and she's always kind of wondered why. She'll have time to explore that relationship. Her parents, who can't stand each other. Her mother, who is so cold, she thinks her dad is perfect, but they're like, fire and ice together. So it's a story about redefining your family and coming back from, getting kicked, and it's a story of marriage and motherhood, and I think that you guys will really like it. So I'm going to read a little bit from it, and because my son is here, and because he doesn't read my books, right under the bus. He read one. He read one. I told him there's a lot of him in here about mother and son relationship, and he said, oh, nice. And I said, so maybe you want to read it? And he's like, yeah. So I said, well, I can find a passage that relates to you. And so this is Lily reflecting on motherhood. What no one tells you is that there will be a last time you ever carry your child, a last time you tuck them in, a last time they run into your arms off the school bus. All through his infancy, Dylan was attached to me, almost literally. I carried him almost constantly, patting his back, humming to him, breathing in his delicious baby scent. He didn't walk until he was 14 months old, and I loved that because I got to carry him that much longer. I took him for hikes in a backpack, his little knees hitting me in the kidneys. I carried him on my shoulders, him clinging to fistfuls of my hair, and I loved every minute. He was an affectionate boy full of drooly kisses and cuddles. He was generous with his hugs, from Paul at the post office to Christine, our librarian, and especially me. Every night when I read him bedtime stories, his sweet little head would rest against my shoulder, and he'd idly stroke my arm, smelling like Dove soap and baby shampoo. Driving in the car was like a tranquilizer dart for Dylan. Even bumping down our long dirt road wouldn't wake him up, and I'd park the car, get out and unbuckle him, then lift his sweaty body into my arms and carry him inside and just sit on the couch with him in my arms, heart against heart. And then one day, he no longer needed that. The bedtime stories stopped when he was about 10 and wanted to read himself. The last time I attempted to carry him from the car, he woke up and said, "It's okay, Mom, I'm awake," and he never needed me to carry him again. Had someone told me, "This is the last time you'll get to carry your son," I would have paid more attention. I would have held him as long as I could. They don't tell you that your son will stop kissing you with sweet innocence, and those smooches will be replaced by the obligatory peck on the head. Is this sounding so familiar, Deco? They don't tell you won't want a piggyback ride ever again, that you can't hold his hand anymore. The snuggle stop, the child, the deepest love of your life, won't ever stroke your arm again. You'll never get to lie in bed next to him for a bedtime chat, those little talks he used to beg for. No more tuck-ins, no more comforting after a bad dream. The physical distance between the two of you is vast. It's not just that he'll only come so close for the brief second, but also the simple fact that he isn't a little boy anymore. He's a young man, a fully grown male with feet that smell like death and razor stubble on his once petal-soft cheeks. Dylan was a wonderful son, and so are you. Don't get me wrong. I love that he talked to me, dropped a kiss on my head every morning and before he went upstairs for the night. But I was in mourning just the same. The minutes rushed and slid precariously toward that dreaded day in August when he would get on the plane. But the truth is, he'd been leaving for years. They don't tell you that. They don't tell you that this person who you grew inside your body, this person you pushed into the world with superhuman strength and joy, this toddler who proclaimed you his best friend, who leaned against you and fell asleep on you and threw up on you and needed you to brush his teeth, that this person would go away, and in his place would be a young man who didn't tell you too much about his life, who did his own laundry. Who did his own laundry, kudos. Who just didn't need you anymore, all because you did a good job. All because your entire life for the past 18 years was to make him into an adult who was independent and kind and self-sufficient, and God damn it, you did it. And what were you left with? His absence. Of course I was proud of my son. Of course I wanted him to be a man. The clashing mix of pride and sorrow, when you want so much to be able to go back in time for so many reasons to when you were sure of your life, because this child was your life. If there was one thing I never doubted, it was that I was a good mother. But God, I missed my boy. That's what they don't tell you, that you would leap out of your chair or pull your car over if your phone chimed in case it was a text, that you would lie in his bed when he left and smell his pillow, that the sound of his voice actually brought tears to your eyes and an ache to your heart, and his casual "love you too" was water in the desert. And the person who is supposed to share this tender, beautiful time had tossed me over. Revenge was called for. I didn't plan it, but oh, how I loved it. I had just been grocery shopping and had an unopened container of half and half in the fridge. I took it, grabbed my bag, and went out of the car. I paused when I saw Brad's VW sitting there. Then, without much forethought, I opened the back door and poured a slosh into his car rug. Repeated the action on the other side. It would take a day or two to sour, sure, but that smell was hard to get out. I checked to see if I felt bad about that. Nope. That night I opened my laptop. Brad was one of those PhDs who loved the letters after his name. If someone called him Mr. Fairchild, he would immediately correct them. He always filled out forms with his title, so all his mail was addressed to Dr. Bradley Fairchild, PhD. He entered his name as Fairchild, PhD. That's Dr. Fairchild, he had told innumerable maitre d's, apple care techs, mechanics, and teachers. Even Dylan's friends were chastised. If they said, "Thanks for letting me come over, Mr. Fairchild," he'd smile patiently and say, "That's Dr. Fairchild. I spent too many years in graduate school to be called Mr., but you can call me Brad," which they never did. Hence, I stayed up till 4 a.m., logging into Brad's online accounts and changing Doctor to Mr. Amazon, Apple Music, his automatic signature on emails, his magazine subscriptions, his bank account, his alumnus listing at Boston University and Swarthmore, his listing on Psychology Today, his credit card, every place I could access. And there were dozens, 68 to be exact. This is what happens when you let your wife handle the household finances, and we're dumb enough to use the same password for every account. Sure enough, 2 mornings later, Brad said, "Did you change something on my computer?" "What?" "No, you have it with you all the time," I said, pouring myself some coffee. "Why?" "Well, they got my title wrong." "What title?" "The doctor title, Lily. It used to be Dr. Fairchild. Now I'm listed as Mr. everywhere." I held up my cup to hide my smile. Then came the ironing. Brad was fastidious in dressing and always had been, even when he'd been preppy instead of hipster. He didn't trust me to iron his shirts, saying I did it wrong. I hated ironing, so it was probably true. So it was fine by me. He should iron his own shirts. But now I wanted to, how to put this, leave my mark. So I peed in a cup, diluted it with water, and poured it into the iron. It was subtle enough that he wouldn't notice it at first, not until the water evaporated and the urine remained. "Dad," said Dylan one night at dinner, "No offense, but you smell like pee." "What?" Brad said. "No, I don't. I just walked past you and you do." Our son shrugged and sat down. "Ooh, clams and garlic sauce, thanks, Mom." "Amigos a bolha pato," I said. "Be proud of your culture." She's Portuguese. "I don't smell like urine," Brad said. He'd always been squeamish about using words like pee and crap, preferring the more medical sounding words. Had he always been so prissy? Yes, I decided, he had. "Do you have a little leakage?" I asked. Feigning concern. "I do smell something." "I don't have leakage." Brad got up from the table and stormed off into the guest room to sniff himself. "It happens to men as they get older," I said to Dylan, knowing Brad could overhear. "It's probably not prostate cancer. Don't worry." A second later, I heard Brad tapping the keys of his laptop, doubtlessly Googling prostate cancer and leakage. I knew my husband after all, and I knew how to punish him. I texted him, "Urinary incontinence and leakage could be a sign of gonorrhea or chlamydia. Best get an STD panel." So that's a little taste of Lily. Her deep love of her son and her deep hatred of her husband. And you know, that kind of hatred only comes after you've loved somebody. So this book was a lot of fun to write for me. It's definitely more lighthearted than a couple of my other books, and there's a romance line in there. But I think what I liked most of all was writing the family, her sister, her father, her mother, all these, interactions that they have, all this careful tiptoeing around each other, but you can only do that for so long. And so it's definitely a book about family and resilience. So a good book to read these days, I think. So I would love to take questions. If anybody has questions. I lock the doors until I get some. Yes, go ahead.
What inspired you to write this type of book?
Well,
Like you said, it's not like your norm.
Right. So I wanted to write about a 40-something heroine, for one. So I figured she should be married. And I also wanted to write about divorce, which is not something I've experienced, and I plan on never experiencing that. But I just thought, how do you rebuild your life after something like that? You know, her son goes to Montana and the same day her husband moves out. And so that's how I start a lot of my books is, what would you do if, fill in the blank, you know? And I wanted Lily to kind of see who she was. She's a nurse midwife, so she's delivering babies and taking care of pregnant women. She's taking care of her family, taking care of her son. And what does she do when she has to take care of herself? She really almost doesn't know how. So, so I wanted to kind of explore that, that age of women where often we do something we didn't plan on doing. We take a swerve and, you know, either in careers. I mean, I changed my career when I was in my 40s, or 30s actually, but, you know, I didn't plan to become an author. And then, you know, I had been going through empty nest stuff myself, so I thought I can tap into that very easily. Got a IV going right there. So I think I just wanted to explore that time of life for a lot of us women.
Had you thought of, like you said, she only had one child,
Mhm.
would it have been difficult to have two, you know, write about two kids during?
Well, there's a little backstory on why she only has one child, so I don't wanna spoil it for you, but, yeah, that question is answered for sure. Anyone else? Mhm.
What made you select Cape Cod for the background for this particular novel?
Well, I've put Cape Cod in other books. My first book was set in Eastham, where my parents have their house. That was like a love letter to Cape Cod, and it is really my favorite place on earth. You know, I drive across the canal and I'm a happier person, and I go into our house and I'm so relaxed and happy. So I thought, write what you know. It's a great, fun setting, especially in the summer, you know, with the tourists and the locals. And the natural beauty is a big part of the story, actually, because Lily lives on national seashore land. So her house is essentially priceless because you can't rebuild there. You can't build a new house. You can't sell a lot. And so she lives on a kettle pond. If you know Wellfleet, she lives up where, you know, Gull Pond, Higgins Pond, Herring Pond. So that's a big part of her love of the Cape, is where she grew up and how she grew up, like a free-range kid running through the woods and swimming and stuff. And the small town aspect is something that I love too, you know, living in one, growing up in one. So I love the community and how they rally behind Lily, because she's one of them, you know, so she figures like, well, you know, if I get arrested, I babysat half the police force, and, you know, went to school with the other half, so I'm feeling pretty confident here, you know. You know, she's delivered a lot of babies and stuff, so I just thought Wellfleet was really perfect for that. And at the time that I was writing this book, I was planning my daughter's wedding in Wellfleet, so I was in the town way too much. Yes, Claire?
The last dog saved a life, right?
Yeah.
How does this dog measure up?
Claire's referring to Pack Up the Moon, where Joshua, our young widower, has to take care of his late wife's dog, and that's pretty much the only reason he's committed to staying alive, you know. And in this book, Lily she just very spontaneously thinks, I need a dog. I can't be alone out here. She's never lived alone. She went from her father's house to college, to nursing school, to marriage. And that was really interesting to explore too. You know, what's it like to live alone when you never have? And so she gets Zeus, a giant Dalmatian Great Dane mutt, who's pretty much comic relief in the book. He's a great dog. Like performance art. He's like our Luther. Just like gets up, rearranges himself, and lies back down every hour, you know. Charge admission for that if you want to come watch Luther sleep.
Other questions?
Yes.
How
Oh, that's a great question. How do I come up with characters' names? Because I've used all my family names. I have 25 cousins. I've used all their names and all their children's names. So I have taken to asking my readers to suggest names, which is really funny because sometimes they'll give me like really far out names that I would never use, you know, like Clancy, spelled Klansie, you know. And I think that's too hard to read. Like you have to look at it, how it looks on the page. Can people pronounce it right away? And they have to be names that I like. So one of my friends has a son named Dylan, and the hero is just kind of a working man's name. I had fun with some of the Portuguese names, like her dad's name is Pedro, and Lily is Liliana Magdalena. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm hearing someone in the cafe. What's that? So yeah, the cast is kind of hard to figure out because you think like, okay, I'll put Christopher who works at Wellfleet General Market. But then I have to remember Christopher, like he's going to show up in another book maybe because my next couple of books will be set in Wellfleet as well. So you'll see Lily again. It's what I call connected books rather than a series. So you'll see actually the next book is called A Little Ray of Sunshine, and it's about Harlow Smith, who owns a small independent bookstore. I just asked RJ, can I come and tag along, get in your way, spend a few days with you? And she's working one day and someone comes into the bookstore and it is the son she gave up for adoption 17 years ago when she was in college. So yeah, that'll come out next June, I think, if I finish it. Yes?
You often use dogs as characters. Do you have a dog?
Yep. In fact, Luther may have been at your house from time to time. We live on the same street. So I love dogs, and I also love cats, but not as much. I had one character's dad owned a snake. That was kind of hard. She also had a dog. But I think that the way we treat our animals says so much about us as people. So, and the animals we choose, when you go to the shelter or you're online scrolling through Pet Finder, which dog you stop on says a lot about what you need at that time in your life. And so for Lily, Zeus is big and he sleeps on her bed, he's comforting. He looks fierce even though, he's not. and he's just a really happy, easygoing dog. Because she has to be at the hospital sometimes for long shifts. So she needs a dog who doesn't need too much, excitement or exercise. Pretty much my dog, Luther. Christine?
So, how do you get into the mood for this? Do you have a Spotify playlist? Because there's some really great songs that I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
Carrie Underwood.
I know, Carrie Underwood, before he cheats. I do like to have a song for a book, but it's usually one song. And it's like the song of the saddest part of the story. For this one, it was In My Daughter's Eyes by that singer. A female singer who's basically talking about like her, she'll always live on in her daughter's eyes. And so Flannery was getting, sorry? Martina McBride, yes. So, it's a very tender song, very, very much a love story about a mother and a child. And I play it over and over and over. So I don't have a playlist, I have that one song and I just play it on low volume. And I think music helps me more than anything else to kind of get into the mood of the book. But I also do like to be somewhere other than home to write. So I'll go to the Cape House or I'll go to my office I've rented places, to get away from my beloved husband, because he's noisy. He always has like some power tool or, something, a tractor or an axe. So sometimes I say, honey, I gotta get out of here. So I'll Airbnb for a few weeks. And that helps too, being somewhere like that my character might live, style or the view is really helpful. And it gets hard, 22 books is a lot. So, a lot of my writing is discipline and just, getting through it. It's not like when I was a new writer, I would just say like, I have a great idea. Now I've had 22 great ideas. I have to make sure I don't repeat the ideas, and I have to make sure it has enough heft to it to last for 400 some odd pages. You get what you pay for with me,
Yes, you
people.
do.
Yes. It's not short. Right? So any other questions? Mm-hmm.
This is sort of going back in the past, but the first book I read of yours was called Now That You Mention It.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep thinking about, I loved it, and I loved the characters, except it seems so weird that a woman would be almost brutally murdered twice.
Twice? Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, well, I don't think Nora, the character in Now That You Mention It, suffers from a home invasion where she is assaulted, and the guy plans to kill her, but she gets away. And then later on, a man from her hometown who resents her for having gotten what he thought was his in terms of a scholarship, who's a drug addict, he is not happy that she is dating his brother, and like he feels pushed out of the family. So he does come after her, but he doesn't, it's a very quick fight, and she takes care of him. Bing, bang, boom.
Like, wow.
No problem.
That's a rough life.
So in like a literary sense, she had to face a bad guy again to show that she was not that person anymore. And now that you mention it, so that you want things to come full circle like that. So it is fiction, as I said. It's kind of like now she's stronger, better, and there's a passage in there that she thinks like her life became gray after that home invasion, and at the end there, her life isn't gray anymore. She has that thought that like now my life is filled with people I love and all this wonderfulness and friends and career and place I live, and she is a different person. Every one of my books, yeah, and every book that I write has a person who's a pretty good person in the beginning, but is better and stronger and braver at the end. And that's what you love about fiction, those things you can make happen. So,
Do you do a lot of rewriting, or is it from the brain onto the page and that's it?
I have an editor, so I write a first draft, and my first draft is terrible. And if I had to submit my first draft, I would not be an author. So as I write, I will tell myself what's wrong with it, and I actually have a document for every book, and it's called Things That Suck. and I'll put like, I hate this character, she's so whiny, or why does this brother even exist, he serves no purpose, or you really should start at chapter 4 and not chapter 1. And so I do this huge overhaul, and then I send it to my editor. And then she's a wonderful editor, and she can kind of pull some threads out and say, I'd like a little more of this, maybe a little less of that. In this book, she took out a secondary character. She just felt like that plot line wasn't needed, just kind of distracted from the main plot, so got rid of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's really helpful if you're an author, is to have an editor you trust, and who works with you as a team. I would hate it. I in the past, I've had 6 editors, I think. I sound like a really difficult person to work with, but they all got married or went to a different company. I didn't fire anybody. Nobody quit me. But I had one editor want a pretty big change in one of my books, and I said, I thought about it, because I thought, oh, she knows a lot about books, she's an editor, and I kind of rolled it around in my head about how that would change the book, and then I said, no, I'm not gonna do that.
No book.
Yep, my name on the cover, so you gotta stand by your work, you know, so. Elizabeth?
Did the P in the iron come out of your head or one of those Facebook
I was thinking that same thing. I would like to invoke my right to look at that. Let's just say I ironed my husband's shirt, so there's no, you know, but, you know, if you cheated on me, no.
That's kind of, that's just brilliant.
Creative.
Just brilliant.
You're all welcome to use that. Joanne, did you have a question?
Yeah, I wondered who you admire in terms of other fiction writers.
Oh, that's a great question. Well, the writing community, I started off in pure romance, and romance authors are so wonderful. Like 3 of my romance writing friends are here. We haven't, you know, they're here because they're great people. And they want to support me. I love, like there's some authors, like I love Nora Roberts' work ethic, you know? I mean, that woman delivers a good product 6 times a year. That's unbelievable as far as I'm concerned. I love Stephen King for the same reasons, you know? He's been my friend since I was 13 years old and read The Shining. He ruined sleep for me for the rest of my life. I would say that, like, I'm not really, the authors who aren't in my list are the writers of the classics. Like, I hate Ernest Hemingway. I'm not supposed to, but I do. And my husband loves The Great Gatsby, and we listen to it a lot, and I'm really over that, you know? But I love the generosity of, like, some of the authors who were my heroes when I was new. Susan Elizabeth Phillips, Robin Carr, Susan Wiggs, Lisa Gardner, Kristan Hanna, these authors who have extended a hand. And it just makes me want to be like that too, you know. So.
Elizabeth Berg, are you familiar with her work? Or
I love Elizabeth Berg. I was just waxing poetic about her in the other room. Yeah, I love, some of her books are my favorite books of all time. Olive Kitteridge, Abide With Me. I thought that was really under-reviewed. What is that first one? Oh, the Burgess Boys. You know, so I love her. Oh no, that's Elizabeth Berg. I was thinking Elizabeth Strout. Sorry.
Oh, actually Elizabeth Berg, but that's okay. There's so
I do
many-
love Elizabeth Berg too.
And Hatchet, of course. You know,
Yeah.
Her old little bookstore when you spoke to.
Yeah, I've been to her bookstore and spoke there. Yeah, didn't get to meet her, unfortunately. No.
Just wondering, you know, it's always interesting to wonder, someone such as yourself who loves writing and is so successful at this profession you have chosen, you know, who are people who influence you, or just not even influence you, but who do you enjoy reading?
Well,
You've answered that question.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I've had a couple of moments of, you know, embarrassment. I met Alice Hoffman at an Amazon party. Sorry. The food was amazing. The food was amazing. And we all had name tags, and I turned around and I'm like, oh my God, I've read all your books, I own them in hardcover, you know, and I was shaking and crying, and I'm like, I'm an author too, and just really embarrassing myself. And I said, I saw that you'll be at RJ Julia in Madison, I'm gonna try to come see you, and she's like, okay. So I've made a fool of myself over her, and Charles Frazier, who wrote Cold Mountain, was signing chapters of a new book, and at Book Expo, this giant book convention in New York City at the Javits Center, and someone was saying like, would you like to meet Charles Fraser? And I'm like, Charles Fraser, that sounds like the guy who wrote Cold Mountain. And she's like, yeah, it is. I'm like, oh. And I didn't go over to him, and he's, you know, so I was like, I hold up my name tag so he can spell my name right. And I said, I'm like, say it now, because you'll never meet him again. I said, just want to say, my squeaky little voice, I think you are the greatest living American novelist. And he said, oh, thank you. That means so much because I am a year late on this book. And I needed to hear that. And so I floated away. It's this close to asking him out for a drink. Yeah, and I almost climbed over the counter to see Mindy Kaling. I didn't know there was a huge line. There was like a mile-long line. I just came around the corner, and there she was. I'm like, oh, Mindy, hi. You're so pretty. And she's like, oh, thank you. And then her security team took me away. I'm like, oh, what? Oh, I'm an author. I belong here. Yeah, to the end of the line, lady. Anything else, folks? Good. All right, I've signed a lot of your books already, right?
No.
No! Oh!
They all have fresh new
See
ones.
at the desk, folks. I thought I did that tonight. All right.
So thank you, Kristin.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you.
Thank you all.